On September 13th, 1974, the television series The Rockford Files came to TV. It was aired on NBC and it ran until January 10th of 1980, but it still remains in syndication to this present day. The first season starts with Rockford as an ex-con who has been falsely accused. He ended up serving time in California's San Quentin prison, and he now operates his own private detective service out of his mobile home in Malibu. He mostly takes on tough cold cases and missing person cases so he can operate without any trouble from local law enforcement. Noah Berry Jr. played his father, Joseph Rocky Rockford. He was a retired truck driver. And then there was Joe Santos. He played Sergeant Dennis Becker of the L.A. Police Department. Stuart Margolin plays Jim Rockford's former cellmate from San Quentin named Angel Martin. He's a scheming con artist that always gets Rockford in trouble, but he stays a loyal friend regardless. The drama series was action-packed, with Jim Rockford doing some crazy car stunts in his Pontiac Firebird, which actually occasionally got banged up during production. Also a constant person in the show is Elizabeth Beth Davenport. She's an attorney that's played by Gretchen Colbert. Now, fans of the classic show will remember that every episode begins with Rockford's answering machine. Across its 6 seasons, there were 122 messages that were recorded. The funny thing was that most of the time, they had nothing to do with the actual episode that they were played in. It was kind of a fun way for the viewers to tie in clues from the previous episodes or get a deeper look into Rockford's depressing lifestyle. It really started to get hard for the writers to come up with new ideas for these voice messages, and they consistently invited suggestions from the crew. Not only did Mike Post and Pete Carpenter compose the theme song, they actually made it to the top 10 on the Billboard Hot 100, and that's kind of unusual for a television show. And it won a Grammy Award for the Best Instrumental Arrangement. For 4 solid decades, it was used as the field walkout song for the Rovers, a British soccer team. It's a pretty distinctive musical arrangement. As soon as you hear it, you know exactly where it's from. Now, Rockford drove a Pontiac Firebird Esprit, not a Trans Am, as a lot of people often thought, though they look very similar. Although the color of the car was referred to during the series as brown, light brown, or even brown on brown, the actual official Pontiac color of the car was copper mist. The car used was a new model for the 1974 to 1978 years, which for the first time was carried over to the 6th season and not replaced with a new model because James Garner wasn't a fan of the new front end of either the 79 or the 80 models of the car. Now, the character of Jim Rockford was originally written in an unproduced script for an ABC series called Toma in 1973. That script was actually rewritten as the pilot for the show. ABC had rejected the script, and NBC actually had problems with the script of Rockford initially. It said that executives at both networks thought that the scripts for the dramatic series were just too funny. The writers were always ordered to take out the funny lines. The writers and eventually James Garner refused on this request. This is what made this show the show it was. You find this so often with these executives that sit in these offices and dictate the way shows are supposed to be done. And the majority of the time, they're dead wrong. The show was co-produced among 3 companies. The production companies owned by Roy Huggins and James Garner, and by Universal Television. Garner actually sued Universal, claiming that he was not being paid his share of syndication profits. Now, after several years of litigation, Universal settled with him out of court. The exact terms are not known because the parties agreed that the settlement would remain confidential. The character of Rocky's father was named Joseph, and he was actually named after co-writer Stephen J. Cannell's father. But rather than Joseph or Joe, he was most often called Rocky, and that was a nickname derived from his last name, not his first. Now, the name of Rockford was used after Cannell found that name listed in the Universal Studios employee directory. Wouldn't it be great to know who that actual employee that was working there actually was? Early in the series, Rockford's trailer moved twice. The first move being from a parking lot located at 2354 Ocean Boulevard in LA in the pilot to another lot just off the Pacific Coast Highway in Malibu. And this all happened the first season. The second move occurred right after the first season to another Malibu location known as Paradise Cove. And this is a place that you see in a lot of other TV shows that are shot there, and there's also films shot there. And the approximate address of that is 28128 Pacific Coast Highway. But it used the fictional address of 29 Cove Road in Malibu, and it remained there the duration of the series. Now, Jim Rockford's friends had several nicknames for him. His father, Rocky, called him Sonny. Sergeant or Lieutenant Dennis Becker called him Jimbo. Beth Davenport called him Jim, and Angel Martin called him Jimmy. Gandalf Fitch, played by Isaac Hayes, had his nickname for Jim as Rockfish. Now, he was comfortable with all the nicknames except for Rockfish, because this reminded him of his prison days, and he hated it. And he told Gandy that several times. Now, Jim Rockford's telephone number that is shown every opening sequence is 311-555-2368. The 555 prefix numbers were set aside by AT&T, and they were call safe numbers that could be used as real phone numbers for American film and TV shows and not really be tied in to an actual number that AT&T owned the rights to. Now, James Garner explained in an interview that Jim Rockford's license plate number, which was 853-OKG, was created by his agent, Meta Rosenberg, who is also a producer and sometimes a director on the series. But the license plate stands for August of 1953, when Garner got his first acting job. And OKG, which stands for Oklahoma, his home state, and the G stands for Garner, his last name, thus making the tag read August 1953, Oklahoma, Garner. And that's the full meaning of the Firebird license plate. Now, James Garner got terribly mad at Glenn A. Larson for plagiarizing episodes of his show. Everybody in Hollywood was mad at this guy because he was constantly stealing other people's written material and using them for his own shows. Garner and others filed a complaint with the Writers Guild, which found the guy guilty, and he was fined. Then later on, Larson showed up on the set of the Rockford Files to try to make amends with Garner. According to James Garner, he punched him so hard that he crashed through a dressing trailer. James Garner was having none of it. He didn't want the guy's apology and had him thrown off the set. One of Jim Rockford's favorite foods in the series is tacos, and it's demonstrated quite a bit because he consumes them a lot. And even though Jim didn't have a permit to carry a gun, he did have one that he kept hidden in a cookie jar or in a coffee canister in his kitchen. Now, the co-writer and co-producer of the Rockford Files is David Chase, and he would go on afterwards to create another absolutely famous series called The Sopranos in 1999. As a little bit of a tribute to this series while he was doing The Sopranos, there's a scene in the first season of The Sopranos that's set in a retirement home where the residents are watching television. Though the picture actually can't be seen, the theme music for the Rockford Files can be heard playing in the background. Now, James Garner was the only actor to appear in every episode of this series. What a great show this is. It's still to this day an extremely fun watch and a funny series. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll continue to chase the classics.